Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
We're live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Ted McGrath. What is up, brother?
Hi, hey man, I'm in Scotland. I'm having fun, right? So I'm about to do my first show tonight.
So I just found this out as well. And by the time this podcast airs in a couple of weeks, you will still be actually in Scotland, which would be pretty amazing.
Yep.
This is your first time moving to Scotland to do the show, like actually airing it in Scotland, or have you done a show in Scotland in the past?
This is. They have this fringe festival every year, so it's literally the largest festival for like theater.
Yeah.
And so there's shows from all over the world that are here. There's probably like 20,000 people that are here.
Where does your love for theater? Like, how did this all start? This is something I did not expect to talk about today, but let's just talk about it. Like, when did it all start? How did it all begin? Like, give me a little journey of yourself.
I have no background as a young kid as acting at all. Like I started performing about 7-8 years ago, and when I was a kid, I mean, the only things that I did, I loved Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's like one-man shows that he did is like Raw and Delirious. So I used to watch those as a kid and I had a foul mouth. I would do these impersonations of these characters, but that's all I did as a young kid. And so later in life, when I started to do seminars, and there's a whole journey in between that, but I started to do seminars and I realized, wow, speaking in front of people is part of my purpose to help people. And I was a great storyteller. So I figured, wow, I can tell stories well. And I saw somebody do a one-man play and it impacted me so deeply. I was like, wow, this person's telling me their story. It's so inspiring. And it was one of the most inspiring pieces of theater that I've ever seen. So I was like, wow, I want to go do that. And that was about 8 years ago. And I went and wrote my one-man play after that.
That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a totally different journey. How many times your one-man play, how many times have you performed it?
Oh, I mean, hundreds and hundreds,
Seriously, huh?
I started doing it. Yeah. I mean, I started doing it like, cause I was in the seminar world, right? So I started doing it at seminars, right?
Yeah.
So when my clients would fly in to come see me, in my December event, I do this event called Speak to Millions. And so I'm teaching speakers how to speak from the stage and get booked and all of that stuff. And so people will come and I'll do my one-man play. We'll bus everybody to the theater, like 400 people. We'll do a big performance and people will see it. And as I started to do that, I would talk to my friends and be like, hey, let me come do my one-man play the night before your seminar for your audience. So I did it in Las Vegas for 500 people, in Orlando for 500 people. I mean, I did it in all different parts of the world, South America, Vancouver. And then I recently did a run here in Los Angeles for 6 weeks prior to COVID. So I've done it definitely a couple hundred times.
Is there any singing involved or all just speaking?
No singing, just me. I actually have an aspiration for that, but I'm not there yet. But it's just, I play 12 characters, so I play in my journey, I'll play my boss, I'll play my tennis coach because I played collegiate tennis at a high level. I'll play my brother, I'll play mentors from my life. I'll play, different celebrities and things that I ran into along the way, so it's fun.
I actually, you brought up a big interest. I coach a handful of entrepreneurs as well on the side, just for fun. And one of the gentlemen I coach, Johnny Larkin, is he does a very small one-man show as well. He's all into theater and all that stuff. So after we're done, I'm going to network you guys together because I'm sure you could probably help him out on a lot of stuff as well.
For sure.
Let's start your journey. Where were you? Where was your childhood? Like, where did you grow up? Siblings? Like, give me a little journey of how the entrepreneurial juices all started, and when did they all start? What age?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. I have a brother who's older than me. I have some stepbrothers as well, and the entrepreneurial journey started with me when my dad. I saw him go bankrupt, and I remember sitting there at the table with him when he was rebuilding things. I was like 11. And he was kind of writing down on a yellow sheet of paper, like, okay, here's my nut that I need to make this month, right? To pay overhead and expenses and all that. And I remember just looking and it made sense to me, like, oh, math, expenses, like I could just kind of
understand it.
And it was just kind of natural. But, I watched my dad go through bankruptcy like once and then a failed business another time. And initially at 21, when I graduated college, I was supposed to go into business with my dad. He was in the chip business, kind of just old, like chips in the computer.
Okay.
It's surplus.
Yeah.
So he was old school, like on the streets, like, you know, my grandfather, same thing, didn't graduate college, went through the 6th grade, and that's about it. So they were hustlers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I grew up watching like hustlers, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of just learned at a young age, like you hustle and you find opportunities. So when I was 21 and my dad went bankrupt, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I applied for a job at a company, and I was like, wow, this is great, because I'm a writer also. So I was like, this is great. I'll go to this writing job. And I walk off the elevator into the job, and it says New York Life Insurance. And I went to the secretary. I'm like, this is New York. Is this a magazine? Because I thought New York Life, like Life magazine. I'm like, is this a magazine? I'm here for a writing job. She's like, no, sweetheart, this is an insurance company. And she's like, do you still want the job? Do you still want the interview? I'm like, I got nothing better to do, right? So literally she walks me into the interview with my still best friend to this day. His name's Mo. And he just asked me one question. He's like, who is Ted McGrath? And we talked for like 3 hours straight. Became like best friends in the first interview. And I was like, great, I canceled all my other job interviews. I'm coming here. I didn't have any job interviews, right? And he's like, you're not hired yet. I'm like, not hired. And I'm like, why am I not hired? We said a 3-hour interview. He's like, dude, you failed the personality test. I'm like, how the hell do you fail a personality test, man? Like the profile that they give you, you know? And he's like, so if you want to work here, you got to go out and do $10,000 in commissions or get 10 clients to start. And sure enough, I did. Within 30 days, I went out and got 10 clients, and he triggered my contract, and I started. And that was kind of the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, because you're straight commission. You know?
Yeah.
And I was an insurance agent. I never thought I'd be an insurance agent, man. And then at 22 years old, you know, he's like, you're going to make 6 figures this year. And I was so green and dumb enough to believe him. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted his approval. You know, I was like, wow, he was like a father to me, you know? And so I went after the money. And, you know, 12 months later, I cracked 6 figures. And that night, found myself, I'm on the kitchen floor. And I'm literally overdosed from a bag of cocaine, 2 pops of ecstasy, 15 vodka sodas, my soul coming out of my body. And the next morning, I was revived. I was like, oh, money didn't do it. So maybe I should make some other choices, you know? Money didn't make it.
And you were how old? You said 22?
22, yeah.
But when did that, I mean, that lifestyle, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. When did that start? That started before that position or after the position?
In 12 months, I made 6 figures. Like it happened in 12 months for me.
Seriously, huh?
Yeah. I was hungry, and I'm one of those people who's very, you know, if I have a good mentor or a good leader, I'm like, they go do this, I'll go do that. You know, if you want, they're like, go get apples, I'll go get apples. You know, go get this, I'll go get it. You know, so
and the influence of, but the influence of the drugs, was that the actual, I guess, your surroundings, the people you're involved with, the business? Why, like, where did that all come?
That came from college, you know, like, it starts like, you know, at a young age, like, you know, I was having, you know, beers when I was like, you know, 12 years old, sitting there with my dad, you know?
Yeah.
And you start doing that stuff at a young age. And then when I got to college, I was an athlete, you know, I walked on the #1 tennis team in the nation for Division II. It was called Rollins College in Florida. And so I got on that team. And so I, you know, while I was playing, I didn't do drugs, but my senior year, it's like, okay, party time. So I got into drugs. And I remember the one night, it's like, it was like spring break. There's nobody around. There's no reason to do it. But I walked into my friend doing cocaine, and I did cocaine for the first time. And then after that, it was just cocaine and ecstasy and all that stuff. And so I started my senior year in college. Prior to that, it was pot intermittently.
Yeah.
But then it just kind of continued. And then when I started with New York Life, I wasn't doing drugs at the time. But then when I made like $27,000 my 3rd month, it was like party time, kegs in my house, cocaine, all that stuff. And then it was, you know, I was off the rails. So, yeah.
There's so many layers to go here, buddy. I feel like it's like a roller coaster here. Tennis. I apologize if I'm throwing everything at you here. Tennis. When did you start playing tennis, and when did you fall in love with tennis, and how far? Like, did you just play college and that was it? Did you try to go pro? How did that all work out? Because obviously you're at a high level. Was there aspirations to turn pro?
No, my aspirations were, I played tennis at, I started playing at like 12 years old, 11 years old, like right before high school. I was a baseball player. I was a pitcher, and it was really good. And I had to decide between tennis and baseball, and tennis just interested me, you know? Yeah. So I was like, well, our tennis team's really good. It's #1 in the state. So I'll go out for the tennis team. And I was athletic. So I went out for the tennis team and made it. And, you know, we were state champions and stuff. And then when I went to college, like this was the number one team in the nation. So I was like the scrub walking on the team, you know?
Yeah.
And my coach is like, you're not good enough to make this team, McGrath. You know, he's like, McGrath, some kind of baller. You know, that was my coach, right? So he's like, you're not good enough to make this team, man. And you shouldn't even try out. And I ended up trying out. And he's like, you'll never start and see a lick of playing time. And then sophomore year, 2 scholarship players went down with injuries. And I got the call to start. And I lost 28 out of 30 matches. I mean, I got demolished for like 2 years.
Okay.
And and then my junior year, I turned it around 1 match. I lost like every match. And then I turned it around in 1 match and won like almost 8 in a row. And then I got elected co-captain of my team. So I went from like the non-starter to the leader of the team my senior year. And then with a few months left in the season, I went out and started getting addicted to drugs. So that wasn't good. So it kind of went downhill after that, bud, my senior year, you know?
Pitcher. I mean, my son's a little lefty pitcher. I'm heavily involved in the baseball world. I love baseball. Actually, just we're from Toronto, Canada, and we were just this past weekend in Chicago, Wrigley Field, watching a game. So, do you still have a passion for baseball as a fan?
Oh yeah, I love it. I don't watch it anymore, but I mean, I love baseball. I mean, you know, Toronto, 1, is a fantastic city. I love it, and 2, baseball. I mean, who doesn't love baseball if you've played it before, you know?
Yeah. So, from the insurance, what was your next venture from there? Like, how did that aspire to you? I guess being a full out entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, when I was 22 and I cracked 6 figures, I was like, oh, well, you know, I OD'd. I was like revived.
Yeah.
To life, you know? And so I was like, well, money didn't do it. So, you know, maybe power and status will do it, you know? So I'm like, I'll become partner for this company. And really, like my bosses were like, you need to become partner. I became like the golden child. Like they wanted me to go around to offices and talk about how I did 6 figures. And so they promoted me to partner, right? And at first sales manager and then partner. And so I became like the number 5 partner out of 500 partners in the company when I was about 28. So it took me like 6 years.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I had that question that many people might have now, which is like, you know, is this really all there is to my life? So I resigned and I left and I went all the way to California I was in Florida at the time. And then I started up 2 businesses. And I wasn't passionate about them. You know, one was like a technology company. I just wasn't passionate about them.
Yeah.
And so my businesses failed within like 8-9 months. I was still partying. I got like the $1 million condo at the time. I was driving a $100,000 car. I was trying to be an entrepreneur. So I basically lost everything. My house in foreclosure, cars towed out of the driveway, motorcycles towed out of the driveway. And then I was just sitting there on my couch with my face in my hands, like in my house in foreclosure. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And I was a speaker. Like I did seminars when I was at the insurance business. I had a great skill set for sales. I built teams. I knew how to market. So I just took my skills that I learned there. I was like, let me teach these skills from the stage. And I started my seminar business and, you know, I built that up to 7 figures. And then I realized that was limited. And then I went online and built my other brands, Message to Millions. And then I scaled that company. You know, it's about 29 million in the last 3 years in terms of online sales.
So give me a rundown of that company. What do you actually do with your clients and how do you work with them? And give me more of a rundown of that.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. Like there's 2 brands. So my company's called Ted McGrath Brands, and there's multiple brands in there, but the 2 main brands are number 1 is Speak to Millions. So we teach people how to speak, right? So how to present, you know, how to sell from the stage, how to storytell. I'm a storyteller, right? And we teach all those things. And then we also teach them like, how do you get booked, right? So when I first started as a speaker, I was getting booked on stages all the time. And I was leading my own live events. So we teach all that. How do you get booked on webinars? How do you get booked on podcasts if you want to do that? How do you get booked, right? And so that's a big part of the brand. And then with speakers, you know, they want to present and they want to storytell and they want to get booked. But my whole belief is that if you don't have a marketing machine, it's hard to kind of really own your future, right? From a perspective of getting clients. So I developed this other brand called Message to Millions, which then teaches them how do you build the marketing piece, right? So for us, we spend about 2.3 million a year in marketing for my brand, and we know how to put $1 in and make $4 back. And so we teach our clients not only the speaking side, but we teach them the marketing side.
You're talking about ad space, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an evolving area that's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're always chasing your tail to be ahead of the curve kind of thing?
Yeah, I feel like for 6 years we had it nailed. We didn't have to change anything. We literally had one marketing funnel. Our ads were working fantastic. We have a sales team that sells $2,000, $10,000, $50,000, $60,000 programs. I have a sales team of about 13, 14 people, and we had it dialed in, right? And so things did change. Like COVID hit and spiked sales, but then after, you had a lot of businesses go online and you had more competition and it drove the prices up.
Yeah.
So now we know, like, in the economy, inflation is ridiculous right now, you know, particularly in the US, right?
Oh, even Canada.
Yeah, it's absurd. Like, you can't even get a hotel room for, like, you know, like, you go to hotel rooms, it's like the Four Seasons charges like $2,000 a night now.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man, you know?
Yeah.
So the prices are absurd, and marketing prices have gone up and been a little absurd, but they're starting to level out. So it is a changing industry that you need to keep up with it. But today, if you have a sales team, and you have like a good marketing system, you can still be very profitable online. And so that's primarily what we do, with our clients, is teach them the advertising piece as well.
Let's talk a little bit about storytelling. I had my last guest I recorded just prior to you. His name is Brad Montague. He was a gentleman behind. Do you ever see those videos, Kid President? Ringing a bell?
Kid President?
Yeah.
No.
When we're off, check them out. I mean, these got millions and millions and millions of views, and he was the brains behind this whole web series and YouTube series called Kid President. And it got to the point where he actually met Obama and everybody, Oprah, and you name it. He's had interviews with everybody because of this web series he did. And he's an incredible storyteller. And when we were on, we were just talking about the lost art of storytelling and how people have to embrace their own story and learn their own story and teach their own story. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, give me the understanding of how important people owning their own story and learning how to be a storyteller is, because I feel like it's almost like a lost art that people are not really focusing on, but it's still so important to building a brand, a personal brand.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you know, it's interesting because, like, for me, I taught a lot of storytelling and still do. And initially it was for, you know, how do you tell a 30-second story if you have time on like something like this, or how do you tell a 90-second story, maybe if you're doing a webinar, 2 minutes, like and then when you get on a stage, how do you tell a 10-minute story? Like, what's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think, like, you have to have a structure to your storytelling based on what you're on, right? But also, you know, one of the things that I think is important in a story is, like, what's the pit? You know, in an industry, a lot of speakers will get up, and you see a lot of this in advertising, but even with us, it's like you don't have a lot of time in ads to say a lot, right? So in an advertisement, you might say about your successes, and if you have time, you'll talk about your pits and your failures. But like, storytelling sometimes misses that today. You really need to have like a really good pit. So, you know, my pit of my overdose is you know, it's a good pit. There's more to that as well, but it's a good pit to talk about because it talks about loss. And it's not about the overdose. It's about the question after the event. So if I go, hey, you know, and I woke up the next morning, I was revived, and I realized money didn't do it. It didn't make me happy. Well, my customer base is asking themselves that question, right? Because I'm selling a product that's about, you know, get your message to millions, speak to millions. So you want to help people. You want to make a difference. You want to impact and make money, which is different than a product that I'm selling if I'm just selling stocks. It's about money, right?
Yeah.
So in the story, whatever the event is, people go, well, my pit moment isn't relatable. And I said, no, it's always relatable, because if it's personal, it's going to be relatable. But it's the question or statement you make after that moment in the story that gets the customer thinking. And so that's the key components of storytelling. So if I go, well, money didn't do it, right? And I realized money didn't make me happy. The customer's going, wow, is money going to make me happy? I never got to six figures, but maybe there's more to that. Then I go fast forward at 28, I become the number 5 partner out of 500 partners. And I have this question, like, is this all there is to my life? Well, my customers are asking themselves that question. Yeah. They're in transition from one career to the next, or they want to become a speaker. So they're asking themselves that question, right? And then the story goes on, I'm in my condo, my face is in my hands, right? And my house is in foreclosure. What the hell am I going to do with my life? That's what the customer's asking. So all the story, people go, well, my story, nobody's going to relate to the drug overdose, right, Ted? Because I didn't overdose from drugs. I didn't have a near-death experience. It's not about that. It's about the question after, right? And if you can take people into the pit moment of the loss and the like, God, I'm down on the floor, they'll think of their loss moment. It doesn't have to be an overdose. They'll think of their loss moment. They'll go, wow, I was down and out like that too when my wife left me or my husband left me. And automatically they go to that event and then they start asking themselves the question. And that's the power of storytelling. And then, of course, at the end of the story, you need to know, what do you want them to walk away with? Right? Yeah. And for mine, it's very clear. It's like, you're good enough to live your dreams. Right? So we're turning my play into actually a feature film, like with a full cast, 100 people and all that. And so when we started with the new writer, it's like at the end, like start with the end in mind. What's the message that the audience walks away with? And so if you were to paint a picture, like this is what I did with my writer, I said at the end of the film, imagine there's a spouse, a husband and a wife watching. And the wife at the end of my film, Good Enough, turns to the husband and says, you know what? I have this secret dream also that I've been holding for 15 years. And I've never even told you about it. And so my real dream and my purpose is to go to another part of the world and save the kids. And the husband goes, you know what? I believe you. You're good enough to live your dream. And now you have this cohesive like family unit aligned with the vision and the goals of each other. And so that's the takeaway at the end of the film. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're with this. Okay, let's just talk about this film now. This is another venture. Right. When did this all come into mind of putting this into a feature film? Because this is a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of logistics behind creating something like this. When did this all start, and what are your plans, goals? Like, what is your timeline on something like this?
Yeah, so the play started first 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Then, but I had the idea of the film like 4 years ago, right? And so you get your first writer and, you realize, okay, my first writer did a good job, but we're not quite there. And then you hire your second writer, which we did. And you realize, okay, we're getting closer. You hire your third writer, which we did. And you're like, you're getting closer.
Seriously?
And now we're on our fourth writer. Yeah, because it's like, me going into this space not knowing about film, screenplays.
Yeah.
Right. I wrote my one-man play with the help of some of my other peers. But going in, you want to get the story right. And you go through trials and tribulations. It's kind of like marketing. I want to launch some marketing funnel. It doesn't work. And I will launch it again. It doesn't work. So it's similar, right?
Yeah.
And so now I finally got a writer who like understands me and really gets what I'm trying to say. And also I have to spearhead the process. Otherwise my message gets lost through the filter of the screen, the person who's writing, right? Yeah. Now I'm like, I've learned that I'm in every meeting and I'm directing what I want the story to be about, so that the message doesn't get lost.
I was going to say that. So you have a heavily involvement in the directing aspect of it, right?
Yeah, and absolutely the writing, like the storytelling creation of it. And then I've got my, somebody who works in my company. She's a producer and she's worked with Sony and she's worked on many, many movie sets, tons and tons. So she's my producer. We had a director initially that, he's actually a well-known guy. And I was like, do you believe in the story 100%? And I could tell he didn't. And I said, so we can't work together. So I had to let him go. So, we're just looking for the right director now, and we have some of the funding for the film. So that's the next step.
Very good. Are you physically yourself going to be acting in it?
Yeah, I'm going to play me.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love what you're doing branding wise. I mean, you're really getting yourself to the next level. And obviously, the more people see your face, the more people are going to realize that. So I love your little journey and how you're going with this all about.
Thanks, man.
When you're coaching, what is one of the biggest issues you find with entrepreneurs when they are trying to get on stage or trying to build their self brand?
It's a good question. So like if people are trying to get on stage, I think for that piece, a lot of times it's like, well, I don't have the audience that you have, Ted, and I don't have the name and the authority that you have, right? And I said, well, here's the thing, getting booked on a stage is about like certain assets, right? And so what I mean by that is like most people think, well, if you lead your first live event, like when I started to do live events with 20 people in the room, I could automatically go to other people at 20 people in the room and say, let's swap stages.
Yeah.
So I would get booked on smaller stages to start, right? The second thing is like one of my first talks, I had 2 people in the room, right? But I still showed up and spoke.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people want to start, I want the 100-person audience. And I'm like, well, that's great. But like if you're brand new, you start where you're at. So there's no like comparison. You just need to know where you're at and then what are going to be wins for you. A win for me is different than a win for somebody else. So you need to establish what your wins are. Like a 20-person room, that would be amazing, right? So that's number one.
Yeah.
Do you have something to trade for that? Do you have a stage? Do you have a podcast? Do you have an email list? Great. If you don't, the other things you have to trade are your skill sets. So like if I'm a really great storyteller, I've had people book my one-man play on their stage without any reciprocation. Like, hey, that would be really cool. Come do that at my event.
Yeah.
I've had that multiple times, right? Because it's unique. So if you're like have a unique skill set, it will get you booked faster, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Now in a competitive world, in a competitive world, not a lot of people, especially brand new people, fall into that category. So the other thing you have is the ability to network. So I remember when I got this woman named Marsha Weeder. She was a friend years ago, and she got booked on Oprah a couple times. And so I remember helping her where we met at a mastermind, and I was helping her with messaging because I'm good with messaging. And she was like, "Wow, you're really good at this." I'm like, "Yeah, I live in San Diego. You live in LA. Let me come down to your place to help you more." So I just offered help. So I went down and we're sitting there and she's like, I'm rebranding. So give me your thoughts on this. And she pulls up this page and it's a seminar page of like her event. And there's like 15 speakers. And I'm looking at the thing. I'm like, oh, what are those 3 black boxes? She's like, oh, nobody's in those spots. And I said, oh, okay. So let me ask you this. Like, how many people do I need to put in your seminar room for you to book me on your stage? So that's a key question, right?
Yeah.
How many people do I need to put in your seminar room? Not, hey, can I be on your stage? No. How can I put people in your room? She goes, well, what would you talk on? Well, the second thing is know your topic.
Yeah.
I go, I could talk on this. And she goes, well, we got somebody for that. I could talk on this. We got somebody for that. I could talk on this. Oh, we don't have somebody for that. So you got to know your topic, right? So you got to know your assets of like help people fill their room. Number 2, know your topic and have multiple options. And then number 3, follow up. So she goes, well, let me think about it. So 2 hours later after our meeting, we're walking to my car. I'm like, what do you think? She's like, what do you mean? I go, what do you think about how many people I need to put in your seminar room to get on your stage? She's like, well, I don't know. And I go, great. What if I brought 12 of my VIP clients and I got them like in 24 hours, I'll have them all registered. Really? Yeah. Now VIP have higher status. Now I didn't have a lot of clients at the time, but I had private clients. So I was starting my business.
Yeah.
So I said, great, I'll have all 12 registered and come to the event. And so I did. And then she put me on her stage with 600 people, right? And so adding value of like bringing high quality people into the room is important. And then the final thing is when I got on the stage, most people were teaching on content. So you have a lot of speakers' content. So I'm like, I'm going to be different. I'm going to tell my story and then give content. Yeah. My story is going to be like 15, 20 minutes, and I'm going to stand out and be a storyteller instead of just a content giver. So I got off the stage after telling my story, and Marsha came up and she goes, wow, that was an amazing story. And I go, yeah, I'm turning it into a one-man play. So the other key is know your opportunities, like know what your future looks like. And she goes, oh my God, I have the perfect person for you. And he ended up becoming my first director of my plays 7 years ago who helped me write it. So the point is, there's a system of what I just shared to go do to actually get booked and actually open up opportunity.
I think the key thing I'm taking from all this, and something I'm very high on, is preparation. Being prepared for the moment, because a lot of people, when the moment arrives, whether it's your first acting gig or anything, they're not ready. So being ready, preparing yourself, putting yourself in that situation and playing that in your head and being prepared for every situation, it just opens up so many more doors, right?
Totally, absolutely, and I think like you got to be just a little bit crazier than everybody else in your vision of the future. It's like we live in a world that's really interesting, and I think I'm an engineer or I'm a salesperson or I'm this. Like
Yeah.
I just believe like I'm a spiritual being who can do anything. That's my
Yeah.
belief. So
Yeah.
if I put myself into like I'm a marketer, like then I'm only a marketer. If myself I'm a speaker, then I'm only a speaker. If I put myself into like I'm an actor, then I'm an actor
Yeah.
only. But like I can do all of those things, and I think the big thing of why I wanted to do the play was like, hey, you're good enough to go after your dreams. You're not just stuck to be a teller at the bank or to be an engineer or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but in our society we don't encourage enough. We invalidate more than we validate. I want to validate what's possible for people rather than say, no, that's stupid or that won't work. Or what do you mean? You've never acted before? Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Follow your dreams. And that's something, it's funny because I actually talked quite a few times. And one of my topics I do is living with no regrets. And that's something I'm very passionate
Yeah.
about, is living with no regrets. And it's something and you could tell you're very passionate about that too. So I love that aspect.
I think that's great, man. That's an amazing philosophy.
I mean, you always hear that. I mean, most people on their deathbed, I mean, that's the one last thing is all the regrets they have. And even if you live with no regrets, let's be honest, there always are going to be regrets.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like, I mean, I talk about this all the time. My dad passed away 15 months ago. Hands down, one of my best friends. Like I did everything with him. I'm 45. I was a 45-year-old. I would talk to my dad 3 times a day on the phone.
Oh, wow.
And
So
when he passed away suddenly, even though I saw him on a regular basis, I did stuff with him. You still had regrets. You still had things you wish you'd done. So having that understanding that I mean, time is the only currency we're never going to get back, and understanding that there is no tomorrow. You got to, if you want something to do, you do it now. Stop procrastinating. I mean, I think a lot of people always have the procrastination, that excuse of I'll do it tomorrow, or this is happening, or oh, it's not the right time. You got to just, and you're obviously just listening to what you're doing with your plays and with everything. Like you're almost like me. You're just like, let's do this. Let's write a book. Let's do that. Let's do this. Which I love. I mean, it just is kind of the cloth I'm cut from, and it's inspiring. That, how old are you?
44.
You're 44.
Yeah.
So you're a 70. You're a 78 baby.
77. Yeah.
77 too. 77. So you're okay. When's your birthday? Coming up soon then.
October 27th. Yeah.
Okay, I'm January 25th. Oh, so you're oh, interesting. I thought you were younger, man. You have a baby face, man.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. I'll take it.
So the other part of that question I had before is, when you're dealing with entrepreneurs, and obviously you're trying to teach them their story. We went through the story aspect. What is a challenge that you see that's a regular thing, that when an entrepreneur comes to you, that's kind of a stopping block, or something that's almost blocking them from getting to the next level?
I mean, well, number one is vision. Like somebody, like most people don't really know their goals.
Yeah.
Don't. And so it's a simple thing, but like, like what's your vision for the future? Almost impossible for most people. What's your goal that you want to accomplish in the next 12 months? Still hard for people,
Yeah.
So the thing is to get them out of the problem, because you ask them their goal and they'll tell you about their problem, right? So people live in problems, and at some level it gives them something to do, right? And focus on problems, versus like focus on what is my goal and focus on my priorities. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I see, is like you need to help people focus on a bigger future and to have bigger goals. And the second thing is that just the confidence to go after it, and it's got to be to some degree like, you're going to gain that confidence in the future by doing it. You don't automatically have confidence, right? You got to kind of be a little bit delusional to some degree of like, I can go do this thing, because you don't know what you're going to run into along the way. When I did my first play, I was like flopping around on the stage. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, man. But you got to be willing to look a little bit foolish to some degree, and be willing to make some mistakes. But I also think that's inspiring. Like if somebody tells me they're going to go do something new, I'm like so proud of them, because they're going to do something new, So it's okay. Like heartache and loss and failure and setbacks, it comes with that. But nobody's excluded from that,
Your first time on stage. I mean, when was it? How did you feel? Do you remember your butterflies? Like, let's talk about that, because and I'm not talking about speaking. I'm talking about the play aspect, because it's a different. I mean, when you're going on a stage to talk about a topic, but it plays a different venture altogether. So there's some form of creativity, acting. There's a different element of a play, right? How was your mindset the first time you did it? When did you do it, and how'd you get through it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw somebody do the play. I'm like, I'm gonna go try that, right?
Yeah.
I remember I tried some version of it at one of my seminars. It was just god awful. Like you can't even I couldn't even confront the audience,
Yeah.
And like you can't look at the audience when you're doing certain things. Like I can do a character now and look at the audience. I can do those things and be like still, or at least be like present.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I wasn't doing characters. I was just trying to do some enactment of a play that was like a story trying to go into a play. So that was a flopping mess. And then, but I still did it in front of my clients. But when I wrote the play, and I actually got a coach who had done his one-man play, his name's Patrick Collins. Then we worked on the arc of the story to get it. And then the last thing we had to do was characters. And so I just said, screw it. I'm going to invite my peers and I'm going to invite my clients. And I had like 180 people come to the Oceanside Theater in San Diego. And at the end of the play, I'll never forget, I texted him the other day about this. Garrett White, a friend of mine, he stood up at the end of the play and he goes, "The fucking balls on you, man. Get up there and tell your truth. Tell your story." Because I go into stuff from childhood and like stuff that people don't talk about on stages,
Yeah.
I go into all kinds of stuff. And he just applauded me for it. And regardless, like my director at the time, who had done his play around the world, right? And does a really good play. He was so proud of us that we got up there and did it. And we were like, arms around each other, like we did it. And so obviously it's so much better today, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like I was doing tech rehearsal last night, and like, the people in the booth, like who were doing the lighting, they were laughing during the play. And they came up afterwards like, wow, that was so funny. And they wanted to tell people. So, you get the people in the booth laughing, like you got something that's getting good, right?
Yeah.
But 8 years ago, 7 years, that was a disaster, right?
Yeah.
Compared to now. So the point is, it was I afraid? Yes. But I remember the moment that keeps you going. At the end of the play, I go into the back of the rehearsal room. Yeah. And there's this mirror. And I lean down and I look at myself in the mirror. And I was like, what did I discover? Because I was like so exterior, right? Like so big. Yeah. And I was like, just like, when you're like, you're so excited and exhilarated, you're like popping out of your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I felt. I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I love to do. And so that just kept me going. And it's been phenomenal. I've had like, the last run I did in LA, like, Joel Zwick came, he did my Big Fat Greek Wedding. He was
yeah.
And he came, he was laughing the whole way through, and he came up afterwards like, that storytelling was outrageous, and we sat down with him. He loved the message. He's like, listen, I think we can turn this into a movie. And he wanted the kid from Superman. Like, he's like, I think the kid from Superman could play you. And I was just like, listen, man, like, I get it. I want to play myself, and obviously they weren't going to take a bet on me playing myself. So he's like, okay, well, good job, bud,
But they obviously saw the story and they believed in it, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a good story. Like, you're good at
give me tell me. I mean, I almost want. I'm dying to watch this now. Give me some stories of you as a child from the play.
I mean, I won't do the enactment.
No. But just.
I mean, I'll just give you two. Like, so when I was 6, my dad walks in, like, I'm, in the middle of doing I'm doing my impersonations,
Yeah.
And my dad, walks in to my brother and I is like, knock it off, And then, in the play, the way it's framed, and you have to come watch the play to see the rest. Yeah. But he's like, knock it off, your mother and I are getting a divorce, and we don't love you anymore, And so like, if you imagine, the play starts with this, right?
Wow.
So,
okay.
So it's like, if you're watching this, like, you come watch the rest of the story, Now, my dad and I have a great relationship today. He's great. Like, everything's good, right?
Yeah.
But like, you have to watch the story and how that transpires. And then, you have me at 9 years old, and I have like my first sexual experience with this girl who was 14, so that's in the play. And then you have me at 9 years old, like with this other boy, and I'm having a sexual experience with him. So you have these things that transpire that, when I was doing this 7 years ago, you didn't have people getting up on stage talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
So when I would bring that stuff up, and it's done in a light way to where it's like it's funny.
Yeah.
Right? And not to say that if that ever happens to anybody, it's funny, but you got to make that light because it's a heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
That people have gone through with that. Now, for me, I have a different viewpoint because I've kind of like handled those relationships, and kind of I feel fine from all those things that happen because I've kind of done whatever work on that.
Yeah.
But for people watching it, people come up at the end of the play, and they'll tell me things that they've never told anybody. So it's a beautiful experience where somebody will tell me something that they've never told anybody. I'll literally wait for every single person, and I'll have lines of people going like, "Hey, this happened to me when I was a kid," or, "You know what? I had this secret dream," or, "You know what? Hey, that experience when you ate the goldfish, that was amazing, man. I was at a party when that happened," right? So stuff like that, it's like funny and outrageous, and it's also like, wow, this is like what happened to you as a kid. Some of this stuff is terrible, but the beautiful thing is, by the end of the story, like all those relationships got like mended, and so you see like this beautiful transformation, and then this realization of like, hey, I am good enough to go after the things that I want and have.
Are you sitting on stage? Are you standing? Are you walking around? Like, how's your presence on stage?
All of the above.
You are, huh?
Yeah.
And there's no costume. There's no costume changing. It's just you sitting there, organic.
Me, 3 stools, some lighting, songs in between different scenes, right?
Yeah.
Like my prom house at the Jersey Shore, right, where I get arrested and banned from the beach forever, like that. Welcome to the Jungle's playing as we go. Right? So you have all these funny stuff. So you have like this crazy wild thing with this beautiful purpose, and there's a young guy.
And I love that because music does trigger emotion to people and connection to people.
Yeah.
I love that. I talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and then we have the lighting, and so you see like the overdose scene starts at the beginning, and so people are like, whoa, what? Like, and I was like, I'm on the floor, overdose from a bag of cocaine, 2 pops of ecstasy, 15 vodka sodas, and my brother Tucker walks in to find me dead on the kitchen floor, and then I pause, and people are like, what? That's how the play starts, and then I'm like, greatest day of my entire life. You're like, greatest day of your entire life. What? And so it sets up the whole end.
Yeah.
Because at the end we revisit that, and then you have this whole scene of the real overdose of like this lighting and like the music and the voices, like, you're not good enough, we don't love you anymore, what's wrong with you? You have all that playing in the background. So it's pretty dope, dude. It's pretty cool.
How, over the last 7 years, how much have you altered and changed it? Like, are you constantly adding to it, or is this something this has been a kind of a polished product for the last while?
Constantly changing.
Yeah.
And, like the ending is different for the first time since COVID.
Yeah.
So the ending, since the message has changed, like I've changed in 2.5 years.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
My message has changed to where it's like at the end, it's like you're walking away seeing me taking full responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So there's like, it was an important message to put in at the end of the show that wasn't that clear 2.5 years ago, but now it's super clear of like, responsibility and the power of communication and the power to love again. Like, those are all things that are put in at the end of this outrageous story, right? That even when I do get like this big stage, I mess it up. Or even when I get this big opportunity, I crash, right? So like you see all this stuff, and by the end you're like, Jesus Christ, is this guy gonna win? But like, I have a win, and at the end you see the win,
Is there any moments ever on stage where you have a little blip and kind of the show must continue? Are you so dialed in that it's just you're perfect all the way through?
Every night's different.
Yeah.
And when you first start a run, like because we didn't rehearse with lighting and all that stuff. You come to a new set,
yeah,
a new stage, and then you got to get the new technical people, and it's a new stage. And so last night the lights came on, and I'm like, whoa. I have like, you have your like sea legs, like, you know, you're on a boat and you're like, what the hell's going on, man?
Yeah.
And I remember my first show in LA, and of the 6-week run, and I came out on stage. It's like I was wobbly and went too fast, and so I was rushing the communication. And so after like 2 or 3 shows, the first week you settle in, and there's a difference between knowing your lines cold and then being able to deliver them cold.
Yeah.
You know, so I imagine like I'm gonna put there that I'll come out hot tonight, but it's I didn't even get to rehearse on this stage yet. Last night was tech rehearsal.
Yeah.
So I got to do like 1 scene or 2 scenes, and that's it. So it'll be like a new experience for me.
How many shows will you be doing there in Scotland?
15.
15. And how many in one night or one day?
Just one.
Just one. So you're doing one pretty much every day right through?
Yeah, like 5 a week. I'll take 2 days off.
I love it because you're doing something you have passion for. You can obviously see the joy in your face. Like every time you talk about it, you have a smile from ear to ear. I absolutely love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love it. I love seeing people do what they want and have a passion for it, because it just brings joy to me, because that's what, as humans, that's what we should all be doing. Because life is so bloody short. You want to be able to.
Right, man. You're so right. And it's like, it's just the fact that like, I remember when I first created, like went to go write the play, I was like, how am I going to do this? I have a business. And literally I was like, well, I had built my marketing machine. So marketing to me is a dream machine. If you have a marketing set up,
yeah,
and clients are still coming in, you can go pursue other dreams.
Yeah.
Right. And my current company, speaking and doing what I'm doing, was my first dream. Right.
Yeah.
My second one is the play. My third one is the film. Right. So we're doing these different things, and, you know, I'm still running my business here during the day. So today, people think I can't do 2 things. Well, you can do 2 things. You can do 3, you can do 4.
100%. 100%.
And if it's important to you, you'll figure it out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
It's really important to me that this message gets out, because I think it's a really, really important message, particularly in relationships that, you know, you start with yourself, number one, but then, you know, you have relationships like, you know, my girlfriend and me, right? Yeah. So in the relationships, you have that dynamic where you want to support each other in your vision. And sometimes one person doesn't always understand what the other person's doing because it's foreign to them, not because they don't want to support it.
Yeah.
So something that's foreign to them, they don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. So you really got to get in communication, you know, with your partner or spouse and be like, hey, here's my dreams, here's my vision. You got to be aligned on that. And that takes some time, you know. And my girlfriend happens to be an actress. Like, she's a TV, you know, star. And so it's funny that I pulled that in, right? So when I told her I was doing a one-man play, she's like, whoa, you're doing a one-man play? Like, how? You're a marketer and a sales guy and a speaker. I'm like, yeah. But to me, like, I always tell my audience, not in the play, but the people that I speak to, I say, listen, to you, it makes sense. Like, for your vision, like for me, I was on stages and then I was telling stories. So as a natural storyteller, of course it would make sense that I would go, let me do some characters and try this, to me.
Yeah.
Right. So to you, the natural progression of your life makes sense, which is also why it's important to tell your story so other people can understand the natural progression and support you in it.
I love it. I love it. One last question for you today. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be described or remembered by your loved ones?
You know, I would like people to go, you know, he's the guy who helped me believe that I'm good enough to do whatever I want and go after my dreams, you know? And he was the guy who believed in me when nobody else did.
Yeah, I think
I'll tell you why, because I had
go. No, go.
Tell you why, because I had a mentor when I was 21, and I didn't know that I was an entrepreneur. I was a kid in college that had been doing drugs. I knew I had determination, and he painted the vision of the future of like, this is possible. And he's like, and I believe in you. And that was the first person who ever told me that they believed in me.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, really? Like, this guy actually sees something in me. And I think sometimes until you get so inspired by your own vision, until you really start building confidence, sometimes you need that other person to go, hey, I believe in you. And that could be the difference between you continuing and you not. And you can probably take a look in your life, anybody watching, of any time you had a failed purpose or a failed mission, it was probably because somebody invalidated and said, like, hey, you can't do that, or that's stupid, or whatever. And you might go, well, hey, it's my responsibility to continue. And that's true. And at the same time, those invalidations that we say to people or they say to us, that sticks, man.
Yeah.
And until you handle that, it's a stop. And so I want to be the guy who goes, hey, I believe in you.
I love that. I mean, it's such a powerful word that's sometimes overused, but not used in the right direction. I mean, what I mean by that is it's such a powerful thing, because just by, like, I got 2 children. You don't have children, I'm assuming, or do you have children?
No.
Yeah. So my daughter's, we're the same age. My daughter's 16, my son's 14. And it's something I've started from day one with them, is that power of belief. And there's a whole story through my son. One day we'll talk about, but he had a lot of medical difficulties growing up, and it's that constant belief, that constant push, a constant drive as a parent, because I feel like that was almost my duty to instill them that whatever they want to do, they aspire to do. They're going to believe themselves and push themselves. So the word belief is so powerful. So powerful. And it means so much when it's instilled by somebody that cares or loves about you.
It so does, it's so critical. It's like a very, very critical thing.
Yeah. This has been awesome, brothers. How could our audience get a hold of you? How could they come watch your play? Or do you have any dates booked in the US or North America after this run?
Yeah, I mean, well, we have an event, Speak to Millions. So that's coming December 8th through the 11th. I wish I had the site on that, but you can go.
You could text me and I'll put on all the show notes and everything for you.
Great. So, because I'm going to be doing a 4-day there. I'm teaching, speakers, entrepreneurs, coaches.
Where will this be held?
In Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Okay.
Yeah, you should come. If you want to come as my guest. You can come as my guest. So if you ever want to make your way out there, it's a 4-day event, and then I'm going to do the play. And so likely we're going to take everybody to the theater if we have a big enough theater in the area. Other times we've just done a setup like lighting in the seminar room and done the play there.
Yeah.
So that's cool. We'll be doing that, and then I have other different causes I support, like Drug Free World is a cause of mine that will help raise money for there. My girlfriend is like phenomenal. She's with fighting sex trafficking. She goes undercover as an actress and rescues kids. And so we're promoting Slavery Free World there as well, which is her charity.
That's such a topic that I have a passion for too. I mean, how long has she been doing that for?
12 years now.
Amazing.
She's got
amazing.
Her name's Marisol Nichols. Yeah. Marisol Nichols, the Marisol Nichols podcast. You can check it out. They just launched their podcast on it. And, she goes undercover with a CIA agent, a former CIA agent, and they've literally gone in and rescued girls from the darkest places.
That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. How long you guys been together for?
A couple of years.
Very good. Very, very, very good. And where else could our audience get a hold of you?
You can go to tedmcgrathrands.com. In fact, by the time you guys watch this, the new site will be up. So you can see all stuff on there about Message to Millions, Speak to Millions, Good Enough, all that. Awesome.
This has been amazing. I'm sure I'm going to have you back on. I might take you up on your offer where we'll talk after this. And I have a ton of people I want to introduce you to after we're done here as well, because I think there's a ton of people I'd love for you to meet in my network.
That'd be great, man. I look forward to it, and we can definitely help each other. Yeah.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much.